Hello and welcome back to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of Wednesday, the 13th of March, part 2. I see everybody's in the chamber. Ms Gill, can we see everybody's online? Thank you.
Members online, can you confirm you're back from lunch, please? Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I'm back, thanks.
Councillor James?
Hello, Jess.
Councillor Leishman?
Good afternoon.
And Councillor Reid?
Present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers, convener.
Thank you. So we move swiftly on to the next application. This is the local applications, and the first one up is for the upgrading works affecting filter beds, structures and access road and engineering and associated works at Glenfarg Water Treatment Works, the reservoir Glenfarg. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, convener. The first local application on the revised agenda for today relates to the proposals for significant upgrades to the existing water treatment works at Glenfarg, which are located close to the associated reservoir, approximately 1 mile due west of the settlement. This application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of 68 objections, including one from the Glenfarg Community Council, whom we shall also hear from today. The main issues raised are outlined in section 37 of the report, although principally related to traffic-related aspects, landscape and biodiversity interests, potential pollution, and the over-intensive scale of development. Next slide, please. As can be noted from the aerial photo shown on screen, the access from the wider public road, which runs from Glenfarg to Milnathort, extends approximately 1.2 kilometres from beside Glenburn Steading. The site in essence is separated into two parts, with the initial development located adjacent to the main building complex, while the filter bed site are a further 500 metres northwest adjacent to the dam at the end of the reservoir. Next slide, please. The first plan shows the extent of the works adjacent to the water treatment works. This includes the provision of a dosing kiosk, backwash tank, filtered water pumping station, and iron piping. Next slide, please. Next, we see the plans for the filter beds area. These would include a downstream and upstream gallery, chlorine tank, welfare and sampling buildings, and sand filters. Next slide, please. This next slide, while busy, shows 4 of the submitted plans relating to some of the numerous buildings forming part of the proposals. In most part, buildings are coloured olive green, with the largest up to 16 metres in height at its highest point due to the ground levels. Next slide, please. These next 2 images on the slide show the respective opportunities for landscaping at both the filter bed site on the left and the existing water treatment work site on the right. Next slide, please. The next 2 images show the respective visualizations at each of the development locations. On the left-hand side is the existing filter bed scenario at the top, with the proposed development bottom left. In turn, the top right image shows the existing building arrangement at the water treatment works, while bottom right shows the extent of new buildings associated around the River Farg. Now we move to a series of recent photographs which I took last month. Next slide, please. First, we see the view westwards from the junction of the public road leading to the water treatment works. Parts of this road would be upgraded and widened to accommodate the construction traffic associated with the development. The photo on the right shows the immediate approach to the water treatment works and how the land falls down to the River Farg on the right. Next slide, please. Next, we see the location of the works, where some existing tree covers and habitat would be lost to accommodate new development. The second photo shows the view northwards from just beyond the water treatment works and also part of the area to be affected. Next slide, please. Here we see the view northwestwards from the access track midway between the water treatment works and the existing filter beds area. The existing beds are located on a small plateau in the middle of the photo, with land continuing to rise to the north. On the right is a closer picture to where the existing bridge over the Farg is, with some of the substructure of the filter beds evident. Next slide, please. This slide shows the view northeastwards from the dam of the reservoir over the existing filter beds. The photo on the right-hand side is from the filter beds looking back through the valley of the Farg, with the existing water treatment works amidst the slopes just left of the middle. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation. We return to the proposed site plan. For clarity, one small addition is required to condition 6, so as to incorporate the need to replace planting should it fail to establish in the first 5 years. Otherwise, the recommendation is to approve as per the recommendations and conditions in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Mr. Fraser, Chair of the Glenfarg County Council, who are objecting to the updating of the works. Mr. Fraser, you'll be aware that you've got 10 minutes for your deputation. I'll give a wee prompt after 9 minutes, so in your own time.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting today. I'm Douglas Fraser. I represent the community of Glenfarg as their chairman of the Community Council. I have a short statement to make, followed by a question I'd like to ask. Thank you. As you know, Glenfarg community has raised serious concerns over the impact this development will have on our village over 3+ years of construction. It's also fair to say that the community in general will always remain concerned over the safety issues the additional traffic will have within our small village environment. The purpose of me speaking today is to raise awareness that a good number of the concerns that we have made have been translated into planning conditions. And we are disappointed that these concerns have not been addressed and resolved prior to this meeting. In particular, I note that the following matters have yet to be approved: the control of construction noise, updated construction transport management scheme, delivery times to be avoided, passing place design, crossing officer arrangements, parking restriction in Church Brae, anti-skid surfacing details, the PKC flood team assessment adherence, Glendy Mill Bridge protection details, beaver and bat licence adherence, landscaping planting schemes, and biodiversity enhancements. All these matters have been conditioned out at this time. The question I ask is, what assurances can we get that when the details are submitted to the council for discharge of the conditions, that we, the Community Council, can also be provided with the information such that we can understand what is being proposed and comment on this prior to approval by the council? Thank you.
Mr. Fraser, are you willing to take questions from members? Members, if you could populate the chat function, please. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you for your presentation. And I was a bit confused by what you said. Are you saying that these have not been conditioned, these things that you listed, or that they are actually contained within the conditions? You could answer that.
As far as I can see, these are conditions that have been put into the notification.
So in essence, you're concerned about the fact that you won't be able to comment on the traffic management scheme, or I'm a bit confused about what you're actually asking. If you could clarify.
A number of the concerns and the objections that were placed and submitted raised lots of different concerns, varying safety issues, traffic issues and the like. A lot of these concerns have been mentioned in the document as conditions of the planning approval. So we don't actually know what those how these conditions are going to be discharged. We don't know the detail of how they're going to be discharged. And we would like the opportunity to see that prior to the council approving those conditions so that we can alleviate some of the concerns in the village. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you, Mr. Fraser. It's a nice, simple question, really. I understand the concerns about safety during the project. Are you quite happy once it's all done that there's no concerns about the project once it's complete?
At the moment, we have no concerns once the project is complete. Our concerns are all related to how the project will impact the village during the construction period.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm just want to clarify in my mind, I'm following through my colleagues' questions. You're concerned about conditions, but I mean, I'm using, for example, there's the bridge, which is Glendy Mill Bridge, and it's proposed to install a Bailey Bridge. I mean, what more do you really need to know? I mean, it's going to be a Bailey Bridge. There's a Bailey Bridge. They'll have to go in there before they can get there. So that condition surely is acceptable. They've talked about escort vehicles taking lorries through. It also says that they're avoiding school times and there'll be a school crossing patroller at school times. I don't understand why there's a concern about the arrangements that are being made. If you could just explain that, because the Bailey Bridge is the Bailey Bridge. That's it. It goes in and they can't cross it until it's in place. So I just don't understand what you want more clarification on. If I can ask that, that's what I'm trying to get to.
I think where we're coming from is, take the Bailey Bridge as an example. We understand, we can see that there's a Bailey Bridge going in and that the existing bridge is going to be protected, but we probably don't understand how is that Bailey Bridge going to be put in place, what effect is it going to have on the local housing, which is very close to that bridge. So we'd like to better understand that so that we can let the locals who are concerned about this know what they can expect. What's it going to look like? How big is it? What vegetation has got to be removed, if any, to put it in. We just need to understand better the process of putting it in place, what the effect of that is on the local environment. In terms of the school crossing or the crossing officer during school breaks, I think we need a little bit of an enhancement on that to understand how does that work during school holidays. The main route to the site dissects the village in half. And we have a lot of children in the village who regularly cross that route. So during school holiday times, we've still got an equal concern over the impact it could have on the children crossing that route. And we understand that all vehicles, all heavy goods vehicles will be escorted, but the light goods vehicles are not. And there's going to be a significant increase in the number of those going through the village. So we just want to understand how that's going to work a little bit better. We need more flesh on the bones, if you like.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thanks for your deputation. You've kindly partly asked part of my question, but it might help to understand the topography of Glenfarg a wee bit, and especially around Church Brae and in relation to the school and children's general mode of getting around Glenfarg at school time and out with school time for play areas and stuff. Can you just expand on that a little bit, please, Mr. Fraser?
The principal route that the vehicles are going to follow is Ladeside, and then from there up Church Brae and out towards the water treatment works. That route dissects our village in half. We have a significant amount of residential property on one half of that, and we have the school, the community hall and other amenities on the other half. And the children in our village generally travel by foot or by bicycle between all parts of the village. And sometimes parents let their children go unaccompanied. our concern is that these children are maybe not streetwise enough to understand the dangers, and we need to manage that to make sure there's no accidents. Do you need further clarification on that?
Mr. Fraser, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. Thank you. Can I call on Ms. Lowe, objector to the upgrading works? Good afternoon, Ms. Lowe. I'm sure you're aware you've got 10 minutes for your deputation, and I'll give you a prompt after 9 minutes. So whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Good afternoon, Convener, Vice Convener and members of the Planning Committee. I'm an objector of this Glenfarg Waterworks. We live adjacent to the waterworks. We're the first house. One of the objections is that the public consultation period has not been fully addressed. The objections raised then. The second one is plans have been added to since then. They've also added now a haul road, pipelines, storage area, bridges, a pipe bridge, a gatehouse, and there's a phase 2, which is a water distribution chamber, which wasn't on the original plans. The pump house will be 50 metres from our home, closer than the 82 metres specified in planning once it's done, and the gatehouse will be at the bottom of our garden. So our home may be open to structural damage due to the vibration from the pylon that will have to be installed. And the road leading to, number 4 is the road leading to the water treatment plant is a single track. Residents at East Blair will be unable to walk safely and driving will be hazardous due to the amount of a large volume of traffic that will come along that road. Point 5 is beavers and wetland will be destroyed. We have a family of beavers and a huge wetland that's occurred because they're there. We have pine martens. The frogs and toads are already spawning in the ponds that have been created by the beavers. These will all be destroyed. Number 6 is the area will be over-industrialised and not in keeping with the surrounding area. And we think, and as a huge amount of residents, that the storage should be at the point of delivery, not at the plant. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yes.
We'll give it a moment for the chat box to be populated. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you for your deputation. Just you know, you're obviously staying the house that's, as you've said, closest to the development. What's the current noise levels like with the current site? And just to try and get a picture of with the new development stuff, is that stuff going to be closer to your house or further away from your house? Thank you.
We do get noise in our home, and we've actually had environmental health out because we had a really loud noise in one of our bedrooms, which was unusable. And as suddenly as the noise started, about 10 months later, it stopped. But I do believe they've been doing some maintenance up at the plant. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but they couldn't find out the cause of it, but it has suddenly stopped. But the other noise is still in the house. And when the pump house goes on, it's only like 50 metres away from our bedroom wall, and it's pumping millions of gallons of water every day. So if the other noises get in our house, I'm not assured that the noise from this new pump house will not get in our home.
Ms. Lowe, there appears to be no further questions, so thank you. Sorry, we've had Ms. Lowe, I do apologise. We've had another submission from Councillor James.
Sorry, my computer wouldn't accept me putting anything in. So thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you for your deputation, Madam. Can I ask, in the time that you've lived in your property, have there been upgrades in the past or building works done, or was this already here when you moved in Thank you.
There has been intermittent works up at the filter ponds. We've had works done in the main buildings where they've bricked in the windows, and they've put security fencing around. So there has been work done while we've been there.
Can I follow up on that, please, Vice Convener?
Please.
Thank you. When these works were carried out, was the level of disruption quite bad, or was it? Were you able to deal with it? Thank you.
It was quite low level work that was getting done, so yeah, it was more easy to manage at the time.
Ms. Lowe, I think we've reached that point this time. Thank you. Can I call on Ms. Suter Bell and Mr. McIlvany representing Scottish Water? I don't know if you're doing the one presentation or both of you. Okay, thank you. So you've got 10 minutes and I'll give you a prompt after 9. So whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock. I can start. Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Martin McIlvany. I'm Senior Project Manager with Scottish Water, looking after the Glenfarg project. The existing water treatment works is 40 years old, and the objective of the project is to upgrade the water treatment process of the treatment works to make it comply with modern standards. It currently doesn't do that in a number of areas to date. Probably the major risk is around treated water storage. Like currently we have about 5 to 6 hours treated water storage on site. If there was a failure of treatment works, we'd start to run out unless we took any more mitigation measures. We'd run out within 5-6 hours. So the project that we have got planned will quadruple that and give us approximately 20 hours storage and time to make repairs. So really the point of the project is about improving the resilience and robustness of the water supply to about 180,000 customers across Kinrossshire and Fife. To enable people's understanding of what we're trying to do, we've produced a fact sheet and we've given a copy to the local community council, and I believe the council members also received a copy of that fact sheet. From the start of the project, we've recognised that the sort of road safety and traffic movement is a major risk, and we've embraced that in our design really from day one. A couple of examples of that is we've moved away from our normal reinforced concrete tanks for clear water storage to that these will be constructed in stainless steel to sort of reduce the number of concrete trucks coming to site and going through Glenfarg village. We've also made an effort to reduce earthworks and balance any cut and fill to avoid taking material off site or to bringing material onto site. We've had early consultation with the local community, the neighbours, and we submitted a pre-application to Perth and Kinross Council. The pre-application was for our initial preferred site that was directly across the River Farg from the existing treatment works, and from that we got quite a few negative responses from the plan officers and from the neighbours. That led us to do a bit of a rethink on how we could sort of move forward with a project that was more sort of acceptable to the community and to the council. And from that, we've moved the bulk of the construction works to the reservoir site, and the bulk of that site currently is it's a brownfield site. There's ongoing regular sort of consultation with the community and with the community liaison group that Mr. Fraser's chairman of. We've also had a number of neighbour meetings and landowner meetings. Obviously aware of the environmental impact of the project, something that sort of feel strongly about, and we're trying to sort of limit that impact. To do so, I'm aware of the sort of presence of bats and beavers in the area, and we've had early consultation with Nature Scott, and they pointed us in the way of the Beaver Trust to help with any relocation if it proves necessary for the beaver colony. We've also engaged an environmental specialist to promote biodiversity improvements, and we're looking to leave a legacy behind where we enhance the biodiversity of the area. We're also looking to make some improvements to the access road, the private access road between Churchbury and the treatment works, primarily to help our construction access, but we'd be looking to leave that behind as a positive legacy for the neighbours and the treatment work operators once we're finished. I think it been mentioned that we've agreed to provide a crossing officer at the sort of busy junction at the bottom of Churchbury to cover school times. We're providing a convoy system for the HGVs that'll be taken to site in a convoy. So, I mean, I think we've gone quite a way to mitigate the impact of traffic and to look at leaving a positive legacy once the scheme is complete. I think that's probably all I want to say just now. Thank you, Mr. McIlvany. Are you willing to take questions from members? Well, as you can see, we've got a bit of a delay with the chat function, so we'll just go a moment. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you, Mr. McIlvany, for your deputation there. You'll be aware there's a significant number of people objecting to what you're trying to do here, and you've made mention in your deputation that you've had quite a number of local meetings with the residents. So 2 questions for you really. 1, how did those meetings go, given there's such an objection? And 2, what are your concerns, or how have you helped to alleviate the concerns of the next door neighbour who lives 50 yards away and spoke just prior to you?
Yeah, I mean, the community open meeting we had was some time ago, and it probably seemed to most people it seemed quite far in future and maybe a bit uncertain. So we're planning to have further community-wide meetings after hopefully we get the application approved. We've had direct meetings with Mr. and Mrs. Lowe. I think we've had 3 to date directly with them, with Scottish Water senior management, to address a number of concerns, both for the project and for ongoing operational issues that they have. I know that noise was mentioned earlier, and probably one of the sources of noise for the neighbours is quite an old temporary generator that's positioned probably nearer the property than anything else. And part of the project will take away that generator and replace it with a modern unit that'll be further from their houses. So that should be an improvement in noise levels. Councillor Illingworth.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. You're putting a Bailey Bridge over the Glendee Mill Bridge. How noisy will that be with traffic going over it?
Once the bridge is installed, I mean, the bridge will be installed to protect the existing bridge structure. Once it's installed, there should be no more noise from that than there will be from the existing bridge. I wouldn't see any reason to generate more noise. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. We all do it, I'm afraid. I'm just following on from, thank you for your presentation. I'm just going from Mr. Fraser's points. He was concerned about not having the finer details of all these procedures being put in place, the crossing patrol, the Bailey Bridge, the lay-by and the escort vehicles. Assuming this was to be passed today, would there then be another meeting with the Community Council to go through these finer details so they understood what was going to happen, actually going to happen now that it's moving into place?
We'll set up a regular series of meetings with the Community Council. There's currently happen every 2 months, and we'd be happy to make it more frequent if they want to. But yeah, we're currently working through a lot of the detailed design, and some of it's not finalised yet. But once it is, we then intend to pass that and take the Community Council through it and the neighbours as well. So yeah.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thanks for your deputation this afternoon. In relation to the biodiversity, and especially around beavers, beavers are well renowned for creating an exceptionally rich biodiverse area. On reading some of the papers behind, there was a concern that, you know, if the development goes ahead and it's passed, that there will be a potential danger to the family of beavers that stay there. If the beavers have to be removed, what steps will you take to ensure there is, according to NPF4, a biodiversity gain in the area, because you're taking out one of the best biodiversity engineers in the world out the thing, and having visited there and actually seen the level of the it's not just the beavers themselves, it's the environment they create and the richness of the biodiversity. Will you look at potentially bringing them back if there is a need to remove them, and relocate them back in the area again, and potentially try and look at enhancing the whole biodiversity area of the area?
So, yes, as I said previously, we've consulted with Nature Scott, and they pointed us in the direction of the Beaver Trust. But we've also employed an independent environmental specialist to help with the biodiversity enhancement. One of the suggestions from Nature Scott was that perhaps the beaver family could be relocated to the reservoir site to sort of further into the reservoir, and we'd certainly be happy to do that. I mean, they said we need to make sure that there are no other beavers present in that area, but that would probably be our preference, and we'd have no objections to the beavers being moved back afterwards. So it's certainly not, yeah.
Bailey McLaren.
Got it now. Thanks. Yeah, I think my colleague, Councillor Allen, addressed some of my concerns here. My concern is about the noise impact, and I was sort of alarmed when I heard the deputation from the neighbour about not being able to utilise an area of our property. I see there is a noise impact assessment that has been submitted, but you know, some things maybe not just quite marrying up here, and I would just like for you to maybe explain a bit further why that wasn't addressed sooner. If you've got equipment on site that's making a noise, how will that be? How will the residents be able to contact you quickly and have these problems resolved quickly, not within a 10-month period? Thank you.
We have a project communications team, that a joint team, Scottish Water people and our delivery partner at ESD, and they've been in contact with all the neighbours to date. We've set up a WhatsApp group that we can take messages, and that allows, and also, I mean, a lot of the neighbours have got telephone numbers, and I quite often get a telephone call directly from some of them. So we have, I mean, I think we've got a history at our time in the project of responding very quickly to anything, any queries or whatever. Our working hours are planned. I mean, we're not planned to work at weekends. I mean, our working hours are planned, and it may be a condition that it'll be between 8 and 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, and that would be it. Yeah, so there's no plans apart from maybe very exceptional deliveries on maybe a Saturday, but nothing planned.
Yeah, I think the resident was sort of maybe alluding to a continual noise or something. So the equipment you then mentioned, it was a generator. That is something that can be rectified, and you know, is this going to be overseen to ensure that we don't have neighbourly disruption out of hours or for a long period of times from equipment that might be temporary but will really impact their domestic situation?
Yeah, the temporary generator I mentioned is fairly old and it's manually controlled. So currently the operator, if there's a storm forecast over the weekend, for example, they will switch on Friday afternoon and leave it to Monday morning. I mean, that'll be taken away and replaced with a modern unit that would only kick in the event of a power failure, and it'll be situated further from the residents' houses. I mean, in terms of noise generally, the work at the reservoir site is probably 600 metres from the existing water treatment works. So any work in that area, probably even construction work, probably low impact. There will be construction work at the existing water treatment work sites that will generate a noise when the work's happening. But again, that may be subject to planning condition around how much noise we can generate. So.
Bailey Williamson. Thank you, Deputy Convener. I was just picking up on a point that a response you gave to my colleague, Councillor Waters, about the beavers and saying how you were prepared to move them maybe to the other side of the dam and then move them back again. I'm just a bit concerned or seeking some reassurances about the welfare. I mean, I would imagine the stress might probably kill the beavers. Would that be correct, trying to move them twice?
The advice we've had to date is that it should be possible to relocate them. We just have to find a suitable site. They did suggest that moving them the 600 metres or so to the existing reservoir may be an answer to that. So if we can do that, then we'll look to do that. If not, we'll find another suitable site to relocate them to.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, thanks, Vice Convener. Just a couple of quick questions, if I may. You talk about escort vehicles going up. I'm assuming HGVs have escorted back down again. Is that correct? Sorry.
Yes, that's correct. There'll be escort at both directions. Yeah.
You get used to it. And the other question was about passing places. Is there going to be more than one passing place? The reason I ask is that in one part of the report it talks about passing places singular, and then further on it talks about passing places plural. So do you know how many passing places are going to be placed in there? And I presume that's beyond Church Bray that we put in.
Yeah, we have had a second sort of independent road safety report that recommended that there should be free passing places between Churchbury and the treatment works on it's mostly private access road, and that's what we're intending to go for. We're intending to go for free additional passing places. Some of that will be situated on private land, so we're in the process of negotiating, consulting with the private landowners around that. but really the installation of passing places would be seen as one of the first pieces of work that we do. It'd be an advanced set of works, and that'd be part of it. So, and again, we'd hope to leave that behind as a legacy. Yeah.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you again. I'm going to come back to the generator. Okay, and it's not to be pedantic at all, but just to try and get to the bottom of it. You're suggesting it's an old generator and it makes quite a considerable noise. Does I pick you up right that you switch it on over the weekends when there's going to be a storm? Is that something you said? It's just okay. Yeah. So, any reasons why, when you're suggesting that there's going to be a new generator, quieter, that can't be installed sooner rather than later?
Yeah, it's my operational colleagues who operate the temporary generator currently. Because this project has been planned for some time, it was always the case that a new emergency generator would be part of the project, and that is one reason why it's not been taken care of currently. The other reason is the site it'll be constructed upon is across from the existing treatment works on the embankment, so it requires a fair bit of construction work to make that site suitable for the new generator. So that'll be part of the main project. Currently, where it's situated, I mean, say it is probably the closest point to the residential properties, and we wouldn't want to replace it on that site.
Sir McIlvanny, there appears to be no, oh, sorry. Councillor Waters.
Sorry, Vice Convener, coming in a wee bit late there. Just one final question with Mr. and Mrs. Lowe and their property. What mitigation are you putting in to minimise the construction noise? You know, the loss of their amenity during the construction phase. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be monitoring noise levels at the site boundaries during construction. We've also agreed to do some noise surveys within Mr. and Mrs. Lowe's property before work starts, and then at some point during construction period. Again, the methods of construction will look to develop those to minimise noise. There may well be some conditions on plan approval around construction noise, which we'll obviously have to comply with. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to be considerate neighbour, and we don't want to cause the neighbours distress any more than needs to be, if you like. So we will take all the measures we can to minimise that. And again, the working times and not working at weekends or not working after 6 p.m. at night should go some way to help with that.
Councillor Brown.
I promise one last question. You did touch on this in your deputation, but my question is very simple. What happens if this isn't done?
If the project doesn't go ahead and there's a catastrophic failure of the treatment works, the existing treated water storage, we've probably got about 5-6 hours capacity. After that, the water run out, and it'd be probably Glenfarg that would suffer first in that. I mean, obviously Scottish Water would take whatever mitigation intervention methods they could to prevent that, but that is the real danger if it doesn't go ahead.
Sir McIlvanny, I think that's it this time. You're free to go. Thank you. Convener, there's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask if the committee have any questions for officers? And I'll start it off. Lots been said about noise, and condition 12 within our pack, it says that all plant and equipment shall be so enclosed. It's really about the noise rating of 35 and noise rating of 20. What's that measured in at decibels, and what is that the equivalent of? Lynn?
Yep, it's round, sorry, it's round about 30 to 35 dB for the daytime is what it comes in, and it falls in line with the requirements for internal levels for daytime and nighttime. But the NR curves, what they do is that they allow us to monitor the frequency levels at the times as well, so we can look at what the frequency is for each level. So yeah, and it's an internal measurement.
And what would
that answers your question?
What would that equate to, Lynn? Would that equate to a washing machine? That equate to a Hoover? What would it be like?
35 dB was probably quieter than a washing machine. It probably equate to just with general conversation within an internal property, you know. So, and it's to allow that you can have conversations without having to turn up the television within the property at that level.
Right, thank you. Are there any more questions for officers? Computer must have stopped because I'm not seeing any. There we go. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, convener. I was hoping for a few minutes to get my thoughts together there, but just sticking on the same subject with noise, there is a condition in there where any of the residents can go to environmental health and ask for an assessment and look at the level of the noise. Does that include the construction phase? Because I think most of the concern about this is the construction phase, the vast majority of it, to ensure, you know, it's not just a 2-week or 3-week construction phase. It's 3 years, which is quite a proportion to anybody's life, I think. And it's just what level of condition is in there to ensure that Scottish Water do as much as they actually can to mitigate Mr. and Mrs. Lowe, but the other neighbours as well, from the noisy big trucks literally going past their window all the time. You know, does that include the ability to look at acoustic fencing and stuff like that, or how do we guarantee, or can't guarantee anything? How do we try and minimise that as much as possible? Thank you.
I'll maybe just pick up first of all, Councillor Waters, in respect of your query there. I would direct you to obviously condition 15 within the committee report, and obviously it does flag about if there are justified complaints. It can relate to either noise from construction or the wider operation of the site thereafter. So obviously then that would come in. Obviously through liaison with our environmental health colleagues, we would then ascertain whether or not there was any mitigation that was necessary, but obviously dependent upon the type of that or scale of it, it might in its own right require planning permission. So it's something that we might have to look at, but certainly I would let Lynn answer any other aspect of that.
Yeah, I mean, general guidance for noisy works within construction, you know, it is acceptable that noisy works can be done within the time period of 7 AM to 7 PM. Anything out with that, then we would expect environmental health or the planning authority to be notified of what the works were going to be construction wise out with those hours, and what level would be anticipated, you know, a maximum level and the time period for that. And then we would have discussions whether we would deem that that is acceptable to be done out with those noisy construction hours that are acceptable.
Convener, can I have a supplementary on exactly the same, on
Yeah,
some of the
go ahead.
responses? Thank you. Thank you. Just in relation to what you're saying, that that, you know, once construction started, we can start deal with noise mitigation. Given, and I think I'm pretty safe in assuming it's going to be noisy during the construction side with the vehicles. Why are we not doing a more robust noise mitigation just now as part of this planning committee to sit and say we expect a certain level of noise here, let's try and mitigate against it rather than waiting for it to happen on the grounds whenever Scottish Water decide to start the works? Thank you.
I think let me answer that first, then I'll let you comment. Thanks. I think we're not anticipating that the noise that would be associated to construction will be beyond reasonable levels. What we've got there is conditional control in place that if that does occur, which is not anticipated, then we can investigate it and the specifics behind it and see what mitigations can or could be implemented to deal with an unexpected situation. But we're not anticipating that the construction activity, and it isn't as expected, there will be noisy activity associated to construction, but not beyond a level that we've deemed to be unacceptable necessarily. But maybe Lynn would want to add more to that.
Even for the length of time of the project. It's not a temporary, you know, I know it's a temporary, constructions are always temporary periods, but when you've got 3 years of it, it's very hard to call that temporary in my view.
I think maybe adding to that is, although there is a long period of activity associated to the development of the scheme, it shouldn't necessarily be seen that all of that activity will be noisy. You know, there will be all sorts of different aspects associated to the development phase. Some of those will be noisy, but it's anticipated that that will be managed such that it would not exceed what would be seen to be acceptable levels. But again, I'll maybe see if Lynn wants to add any further to that.
I mean, we have dealt with construction sites that have, you know, that do 3 years or more, and one of the way of controlling the impact on residents is to control the timings of these noisy workings, and the timings that were put forward by Scottish Water were acceptable for us with regards to construction hours, and the noisy works that they're going to be doing within that.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions for officers?
Convener, I've sent 2 through on my screen, but obviously not picking up.
Not getting up my screen much. Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Just a quick, both for Mr. Williamson, if I may. First one relates to paragraph 5. It talks about the number of the works are under permitted development, right? So am I right in saying that hypothetically, if we turned this proposal down, Scottish Water could still go ahead and do this work?
What I would add, and is without necessarily getting into the specifics of it, Councillor Braun, is that I would need to look at the distinct detail of which elements could be permitted development as opposed to the ones which aren't, and I couldn't give you a definitive answer on that today, but some works could take place on the site through permitted development, but obviously the scale of some of the interventions and buildings on site are such that, you know, they definitely require planning permission, hence the application that's before us today.
Just
yeah, Councillor Braun, I think that paragraph in itself is just indicating that only certain aspects of the overall project require planning permission and other are permitted development. But yes, they are all interrelated, and you wouldn't expect necessarily, unless the whole project changed, for one aspect to go ahead in isolation from another, or if this planning permission was not granted, that would necessarily mean that those aspects would go ahead. But again, it would probably be better a question to be directed to the applicants as to what scenario might kick in.
And if I may, my last question is on condition 16. We talk about timing construction deliveries, particularly around about school start times and finish times. And I noticed on one of the objectors' letters, they asked if we could specifically mention a time rather than just leave it vague. And they were talking about 8:30 to 9 AM in the morning and 3 PM to 3:45 PM in the afternoon, which I presume was school going and school leaving times. can that be put into the condition, the specific times?
Thank you, Councillor Braun. There's no reason that we couldn't be more specific on the actual times. Obviously, we have heard today from Scottish Water and from Martin as to the specific lengths that they are willing to go to in respect of the dialogue that they're undertaking with the community, and obviously the provision of the crossing patrol officer, for example, and their elements that they are putting forward themselves, which are, you know, out with the realms of planning. It's on their community or goodwill basis that they're going forward with that. But if members were so minded as to be more specific in some way, then we could look at it. But we just need to make sure that the revised condition would meet the 6 tests within Circular 498.
Yeah, I could maybe make a suggestion there. Obviously, we also have condition 5 that requires a construction traffic management plan, and similar to what we did earlier today in relation to one of the other applications, we could perhaps add an additional item to that, requiring that those timings are incorporated into the construction traffic management plan. But does that make sense to you, Paul and Colin?
Yes.
Right, thank you for that. Now, I'm not seeing any more further questions in my chat, so shout up if you did have another question. Councillor Cuthbert. Well, you want to ask for that first, but yes, I'll ask for a motion. Councillor Cuthbert, you want to put a motion?
If I may put a motion forward, I think these works are necessary. I don't think there's any doubt the works are going to cause a major impact on the community of Glenfarg. I think the number of size of vehicles is going to detract from the amenity of the community. I'm also sad that we couldn't find an alternative route which avoided Glenfarg, but given the road's roundabout, I can understand that. What I want to do is to put forward the motion to approve the application with one change to condition 5, if possible. So in that it says that a traffic management scheme shall be submitted to and approved by the council as planning authority. What I would like to do is to insert in there that it should be submitted to local members and Glenfarg Community Council for comment prior to being approved by the planning authority. So basically I'm approving this just with one slight tweak of condition 5, which says the traffic management scheme should be passed to local members and the community council for consideration first.
Councillor Cuthbert hesitating because certainly that's very much out the ordinary for this, because conditions are, when they come to be discharged, there's a formal process that's gone through where those details are submitted to the planning authority, which means on this occasion development management, you're probably the same planning officer, and that is a formal decision to be made. To put anything more in, one may cause delay, you know, that's possible. But also, if suggestions are made, it may be that the decision still has to be the planning authority's decision, and there couldn't be, for example, a veto by anyone else. It must be a planning authority decision, no matter what.
That's why I was quite careful in my wording. So it's to be passed to the groups for comment prior to approval by the council officers.
Okay. Sorry, members, the other alternative is something where an informative is put on to request that the developer consults the local community or sort of advises them of it before going further forward and getting approval. That is, yes, I agree, softer, and it's asking them to do, not requiring them to do. But it's certainly that's a possibility that it could improve the situation. You've heard already that they have indicated that they are going to be consulting neighbours and community council. And we're just conscious of the process, Councillor Cuthbert, and it's a very unusual request. I'm not sure it's actually, I've seen it done before. I'm not 100% sure.
Yes, I was looking to put something in that was a bit firmer than usual. That was the whole point of doing this. Whether something's not normal doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. So my view is that I would like to keep it as I put it forward. So it gets past the community council and local members for comment, just so they can comment back to the planning authority, and then the planning authority can make the decision to approve. I think one of the points is that they might say, right, we want these times for the crossing patroller, and that can then be passed up to you as authority, so you're aware of what the community is saying before you approve the document. That's the whole point.
Okay, committee, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. All right, okay. Okay, everyone, this is us back again. After some discussion, I'll pass over to Mr. Elliott to brief everyone what's been accepted.
Thank you, Commissioner, or at least proposed rather than accepted yet.
As soon as I said it, I thought that's wrong.
Yes, I think we are, of course, at the moment, Councillor Cuthbert is proposing to approve with an amended condition 5. And members, for your benefit, if I can narrate what has been discussed. Condition 5, if you have it before you, is for a construction traffic management scheme, and there are various requirements listed in that, A to J or J. And it's proposed to add in an extra element detail into that requires to be done. And it's along the lines of report, and this is, by the way, is by the developer, which is Scottish Water, to comply with. Report on consultation undertaken on all aspects of proposed details of the TMS with local elected members and the local community council. So Councillor Cuthbert, look to you first of all that you're content with that wording.
I'm content with that wording.
Councillor James, as a seconder, do you content with that wording?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that, convener.
Thank you. Do we have any amendment? No amendment. Okay then. So the planning permission is granted subject to the amended condition 6 and the insertion of condition, which one was it? Condition 5. Planning permission is granted. Thank you. We're taking a 5-minute comfort break. So the next application, have everybody's attention, please. The next application is for the erection of a wind turbine up to 2.3 megawatt, formation of access track, hard standing and construction compound and associated works. Simon Howie Butchers, Findoni Farm, Dunning. And to introduce the report is Mr. Smith.
Thank you, convener. Now I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. This application proposes a wind turbine capable of generating up to 2.3 megawatts of electricity and measuring 69 metres to hub and 104 metre to maximum blade tip vertical reach, the rotor blades being 35 metres long. The turbine itself is to be located southwest of and is associated to a butchery product factory just outside Dunning. It would complement existing solar and battery storage infrastructure at the factory and is intended to create further energy security in terms of both supply and price, as well as reducing the carbon footprint of the business. Various associated works are also to be undertaken as per the description of application. In summary, it's accepted that there would be visual impacts on both the landscape and the setting of built heritage. However, on balance, the positives of the development, when assessed against the development plan in the round, and particularly policy 11 of NPF4, and with account taken of matters such as decarbonising the operational footprint of the business, providing energy security, meeting renewable energy generation targets, reducing cost volatility, all providing greater certainty for the business viability going forward, and therefore greater security in employment therein. Also, other potential impacts such as noise and shadow flicker have been explored in detail, and it's considered these can be mitigated. This balanced approach see it recommended that the application be approved. I'll now take you through a visual presentation to set the scene. Firstly, this is a satellite image with the site boundaries overlain. The turbine itself is south of Dunning and southwest of the applicant's factory. Although whilst the image is relatively recent, it does not show the recently erected solar panels to the north, immediately west of the factory. The turbine itself would be located in the far lower left corner or southwest corner. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed site plan. This shows the layout intended, with the turbine itself to the far west side and marked as a green circle. Access is to be taken via the factory junction to the public road. Next slide, please. For information, this is a plan of the recently developed solar panels west of the factory. The turbine itself just out of shot in the lower left part of the screen. Next slide, please. Here is an image of the turbine itself, which is of the scale previously described and of familiar turbine form. Although a specific model is proposed, and it is that model which has been assessed and conditioned, any change from this model would require for approval. Next slide, please. This plan shows in purple the zone of theoretical visibility and recognises that the turbine will have a relatively extensive theoretical visibility reflective of its size and the surrounding landscape and topography. Next slide, please. So we now have a series of images which show likely views from various locations and the proposed turbine superimposed in the centre of each photograph shot or the wireframe diagram is above, both of which are the same. The photograph shot, you can see the turbine in the same position as the upper image. So the first view here is from the northeast on the A934 near Fertiviet, the turbine visible to the right of the road in the centre of the shot. Next slide. Second image is from much closer to the northeast at Quarry Road. Next slide, please. We then move to the southeast and a view from Kippen with the turbine visible over the ridge. Next slide, please. Then we move further southeast and see a view from Condy Road. Next slide, please. The fifth image shows a likely view from Maggie Walls Monument to the northwest. Next slide. This image is more distant from the Findogask Ridge to the further north. Next slide, please. And the final likely view is closer and again from the north on the B9141 approaching Dunning from the A9. Now we move to a series of photographs taken recently. The left photograph here shows the view from adjacent to the solar panels looking south across the field towards where the turbine would be sited. It also shows how the topography rises beyond. The right photo looks northeastwards from the turbine location and again shows the rising topography in the opposite direction from before towards the solar panels and also a glimpse of the factory. Next photos, please. These next images see the left photo showing the boundary at the northern end of the field at the edge of the solar panels. It is also from here that topography has risen from the base of the turbine and then falls down towards Dunning and then shown in the photo on the right. Next photo, please. This image shows a view south from adjacent to the highest point in the application field. The first hill on the left is Kippen Hill, which is 170 metres tall, while in the centre beyond is Back Hill of Kippen at 360 metres. Next photos, please. The left-hand photo shows the view north from Kippenholm Farm back down over the applicant's factory. This illustrates how the site sits in a low part of the rolling topography as viewed from above Dunning. The second photo on the right shows the view west from the B934 near the residential property known as Longmeadow, with the turbine to be located in the centre of shot. Next photo, please. Lastly, here we see a view from the Condy Hill Road near West 3rd and at an elevated position looking back westwards towards the site. The turbine itself would be located in the left-hand centre, and this image also shows the separation from the village to its location. Next slide. So thank you, convener. That now concludes the presentation and we return to the proposed site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. There are deputations on this, so I'll hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Can I call on Mr. Young, objector and representing Dunning Community Council? Good afternoon, Mr. Young. I'm sure you'll be aware that you've got 10 minutes for your deputation and I'll give you a prompt after 9 minutes. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Councillors, it is not normal practice for Dunning Community Council to object to planning applications. However, following our November meeting, 98 people attended and presented us with a whole raft of reasons. We collated their comments and submitted a single objection on their behalf. Since that meeting, we have received objections from over 100 households in the village, and we can report that the feelings of these objectors has not diminished. If anything, it has hardened. This application has urged you to seek guidance from MPF 4 Policy 11. However, this policy relates more to wind farms than to an individual wind turbine, and the penultimate paragraph states, in considering any impact, significant weight will be placed on the contribution of the proposal to renewable energy generation targets and on greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets. In this instance, the vast amount of electricity currently being produced in Scotland and being consumed comes from renewable sources, with the occasional top-up from gas-powered source at Peterhead. This has led us to the conclusion that the stated annual saving, 500 tonnes of carbon emissions, may be higher than that which can be achieved, and may not make much of an impact on the renewable energy targets or the greenhouse gas emissions reduction target. It is the view of many of those who provide us with comments that a local matter such as this should be considered through Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan 2, rather than follow a national set of guidelines that not to take into account the specific circumstances in a specific area. In considering this application, your own conservation officer has stated I object to the proposed development on the basis that the application does not adequately demonstrate that the potential significant harm to the historic environment is outweighed by social and economic benefit. The proposal in its current form is contrary to LDP policies 27A, 28A, 33A, 39, and NPF policies 7 and 11. From what is contained in your report, the only economic benefit will be to the applicant, while the impact on the residents of Dunning and the built and natural heritage will be considerable. The height of this proposed wind turbine cannot be hidden from views throughout this part of Strathare. It is more than 4 times the height of St Ser's Church and would tower over the village as a very dominant feature, while adversely impacting on the built and natural heritage of the area to the detriment of the many people who visit Dunning as a tourist destination throughout the year. In response to an email inquiry by one of our members in May of 2023, the PKC planning officer advised that under policy 33D of Perth and Kinross Council LDP2, the site of the proposed development falls within Group 2, areas of significant protection, namely the 2-kilometre buffer around the settlement boundary of Dunning for community separation. This proposal is less than 500 metres from the village and is therefore unacceptable. The section of the paper before you in landscape and visual impact is a muddled representation of the facts and concludes in paragraph 63 of the statement. The support for the turbine is therefore required to be balanced between the visual amenity and character of the area and the economic environmental aspects in terms of reducing carbon emissions. We've already established that there will be limited reductions in carbon emissions or contributions to greenhouse gas emissions targets, while the visual amenity and character of the area is seriously compromised. In 2015, a proposal to erect a smaller wind turbine to the south of Glenfarg was refused by Perth and Kinross Council, and that community was spared the imposition of an unsuitable structure on its doorstep. We would ask that you afford Dunning the same protection from a totally unsuitable structure in a totally unsuitable location. Finally, of the 26 conditions applied to the application, 9 have the reason given as in order to safeguard the residential amenity of the area. Councillors, you can safeguard the residential amenity of the area, the historic significance of the built heritage and the natural environment by refusing this application as it is contrary to policies 27A, 28A, 33A, 33D and 39 of your own LDP2 and does not accord with policy 11 of NPF 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young, for your deputation. Are you willing to take questions from members? We'll give it a moment while the chat box populates. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Mr. Young, for your deputation. I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate here, I think, if I may. I live at Bridger-Cally. We have a 16-turbine wind farm at Drumderg, which is highly visible from the top of a hill. We have a 4-wind turbine farm at Tallymurdoch, which is not so visible, but you can see it when you're driving. And we also have a single turbine, and the farmer's put one up in his land. They're there. And I think I speak for most of the people in the area. We see them, but we've got used to them. You know, just as we get used to telegraph poles and electric pylons in fields, they just get used to it. And I'm just wondering what your comment would be on that, because initially everybody objected to these, but they went through, obviously, after much inquiries. But they are there now, and nobody bothers about them. And I just wondered, really, would that not be the same with yourselves if it's passed? And I say if. Would it just be something on the horizon which you see? And bear in mind, it's a single turbine, it's not a wind farm. Would you just get used to it? It's there.
I can't respond on behalf of the whole community. what I can say to you is that we are already in discussions with Brunt Hill Wind Farm and Craighead Wind Farm developers to the south of the village. All their turbines are very well shielded behind the hills. They blend into the topography very well. The views of a larger number of people in the village are that this is just too big, too prominent, and too close.
Mr. Young, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. Thank you. Can I call on Dr. Gardner, objector to the application? Dr. Gardner, you'll be aware you've got 10 minutes for your deputation, and when you're ready to start, I'll start the clock.
I just have a few technical questions or statements about the document that was produced and passed by the reporter. The first one is about the shadow flicker or the strobe effect. The model used by the applicant shows that the theoretical level of strobing flicker is above the yearly permitted for the majority of the houses in Dunning, at over 30 hours per year. The applicant erroneously goes on to state that the weather will reduce this below this limit. However, the limit is defined as the theoretical 30 hours, not dependent on different weather. There's also in the, as I live in Townhead, I will be subjected to levels of flicker and strobing above this limit throughout the year, particularly when the sun goes past about 3 o'clock in the sky. It will be strobing in my kitchen and my dining room. There is the mitigation that it says in the document that the weather effect will reduce this to below an effective 30 hours is not appropriate, and there should be mitigation in the actual operating hours of the machine to prevent it from giving flicker and strobe effects into the entirety of the village of Dunning. Second point is the noise impact. There has been no assessment of the impact of the noise on residents of Dunning. The applicant and the reporter have agreed to mitigate the maximum level of noise to the maximum allowed of 35 decibels in an outside house in a garden. And this is based on the World Health Organization assessment of a level of noise which prevents sleep. So if you wake up, you will not get back to sleep if you're outside enjoying your garden. The applicant uses the 43 decibel level for night time because it's expected by the WHO that everyone will be indoors at night time and so are able to get to sleep at a higher outside noise level. But this, of course, excludes a fair number of properties in Dunning who have single glazing because it is listed buildings and a conservation area. So what is required is that the assessment clearly describes the impact of the development on residents, not a random or arbitrary 35 decibels. The requirement to describe the impact of this development is set out in the EU Environmental Assessment Directive. The use of the ETSUR 97 that the applicants used to determine the noise levels does not comply with EU law or the UK regulations because it doesn't measure the impact on the actual person. The alternative that is usually applied is BS 4142, which is methods for rating industrial noise affecting mixed residential industrial areas. And it's a British standard that has been in existence for 40 years and is used for assessing noise from all other types of industrial developments. And from this, it states that anything above 5 decibels above background is considered to be likely of significant detriment. Now, the background at Dunning is 20 decibels outside, and so a 35 decibel is 15 decibels above what our background is, and that's equivalent to 3 times the background noise in loudness. and the BS 4142 would state that this would be a major loss of immunity for 8 decibels above background. We're talking about 15. With regard to the claimed green potential of the CO2 savings, Scotland is self-sufficient in wind-generated electricity. Currently, the applicant's electrical requirements are provided by renewables when the wind is blowing. Indeed, we, the consumers, have already paid wind operators not to produce when the wind supply exceeds demand. If the applicant removes their electrical demand from the grid, it will cost us, the consumers, actually more money. The council planning process has a duty to protect residents from inappropriate industrial development in residential areas. And there is a balance between tackling carbon emissions and maintaining residential amenity. This development falls far below any reasonable threshold, with detriment to the 1,000 residents in Dunning, and the only benefit being for the profit of one individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Are you willing to take questions from members? Okay, if we go a moment to populate the chat. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you for your deputation. Coming back to this question of shadow flicker, I think you mentioned that the shadow flicker would affect Dunning. The report here, however, says it will affect 4 locations with this theoretical 30 hours limit per year. But and you went on to mention about, it does say here about the climatic and weather conditions will reduce that. I know you said it was a theoretical level, but the point is that the weather, the climatic conditions will affect it and will reduce it. Even though it's a theoretical figure, it will be lower. Would you not agree to that? I'm not sure what figure we go to, but it doesn't tell us, but it says it will reduce it.
The old National Development Plan stated that no development should be within 2 kilometres of a residence. That was found that in the new number 4, that's been erased, but given so enabling rather than having a blanket ban, you could have individual sites evaluated within 2 kilometres. The reason for the 2 kilometres is that that will cause anything within that will be affected by shadow flicker. Anything out, that's we want. So you have to evaluate how something that is only less than 600 metres from somebody's house will have shadow flicker. The weather, and that's the national, that's the WHO government guidelines about the level of shadow flicker that is acceptable throughout a year. And this will all be concentrated within a certain period of time, because the sun will go down beyond the southern hills during the winter time. You won't see the sun; it won't see this flicker. So it's actually all concentrated in certain periods of the year.
Dr. Gardner, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Can I call on Mr. Howie, the applicant, being supported by Mr. Collin and Ms. Lyle? I'm sure you're aware you've got 10 minutes, and I'll give you a prompt after 9. So when in your own time.
Good afternoon. Perhaps I could just give you some background to what we're doing out at Dunning and what's brought about our need for a new turbine beside our factory. We have 141 people on site. A number of years ago, we managed to come off grid for sewer and water. So all our water comes from boreholes, and we treat all our waste on site. We put in some solar onto our roofs about 8 years ago and made a big difference to our energy usage and the profile of that. And we decided we would go further on that. And 2 years ago, we applied to the council for 2.1 megawatts of solar, which was put through within 5 weeks. Thank you very much. And we added a 900 kilowatt battery onto that, which allows us to buffer so that we don't have to spill onto the the grid. We can accumulate energy during the day and use that during the night. I don't want to use the words icing on the cake because it sounds like the wind turbine is superfluous, but to really take us off grid for gas and for electricity, we're looking to add on this with this wind turbine. In order to reduce our gas usage, you may ask, how are you going to do that? We've put in two 15,000 litre water tanks, which will act as thermal batteries. So we have 280 kilowatt heaters in those that use the electrical energy, convert that into heat, and that then is used to feed our boilers, which instead of taking water at 10 degrees, we take the water in at 80 and 90 degrees. Therefore, the delta and the amount of gas that's needed to actually take us to steam is greatly reduced. And for washing, actually, we have to cool the water to use it to wash down in the factory. So it's a fantastic system. The turbine will allow us to be able to go to our customers, all of whom are very challenging us very heavily on our carbon footprint, and we should be greatly reducing that. In fact, if we do spill energy onto the grid, it will be green energy, so we'll be adding to the base load. Anecdotally, we hear that there's a 40 to 50% base load of renewables. It's not anything like 100%, but we were greatly dismayed when Mr. Putin fired his first shot 2 years ago, that the first thing that happened was gas and electricity bills went up by about 5 to 7 times, and which to us just felt like bullying. So we had some reserves in our coffers and decided that we would try and insulate ourselves from that. So the feedback we're getting from our customers is extremely positive, and of course the ability to insulate ourselves from corporate bullying like we've seen over the last few years in terms of the energy side of things, which to us feels like a massive redistribution of wealth rather than actually a requirement to pay more for something that's already there. So a bit of a win-win with that. If we look at exemplar businesses throughout the country, we go up to Mackie's business at Rothy Norman and see turbines, we see solar panels, and we see batteries in their business, and they're an off-grid business making 20 million packs of product a year, similar to ourselves for the supermarkets, without the need for fossil fuels. And we hope that if you allow this to go through, that you'll be able to go to meetings with other councils and people throughout your community and be able to talk about a business locally that's doing the right thing in terms of investing its money and coming off grid. So be happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. We'll give it a moment for the chat function to be populated. Convener Massey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. What do you call it? Turbine flicker was mentioned, shadow flicker. How are you going to negate that?
Took out my depth on shadow flicker. I'll let Green Cat Renewables answer that if you don't mind.
Yep. Shadow flicker, so just to clarify, the shadow flicker area of influence is approximately 10 rotor diameters. So it's about 700 meters in this instance. And that's where the 4 properties that were mentioned in the report has come from. We have a planning condition around monitoring if there is a complaint received to investigate, and then there are mitigations available within the turbine programme that can be shut down through certain times if it's found that it's going to be of a nuisance level. But as was noted, this is subject to weather conditions and everything throughout the year, so it's not expected to be a significant impact.
Councillor Cuthbert.
My question was just answered. Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
I'm putting these through fast. I'm not sure how fast these come through. We've had one question answered on shadow flickers. That's gone. It's 104 meters high, I think, to the tip of the blade. These turbines come in obviously different heights. Does it need to be that high? I appreciate the higher they are, they generate more power. I think my understanding of them, I'm not very limited knowledge, but bear in mind you've got a solar panel farm now, you've got solar panels on your roof. Do you need to have a turbine so high?
So we looked around at for the most optimal solution. The wind speeds are not fantastic where we are, and the smaller the turbine is, the less it kicks in at lower wind speeds. So our turbine will kick in at 3 and 4 meters per second, whereas the smaller, lower turbines won't. So we found that to be the most optimal solution. You know, I would say that I totally recognise that the wind turbines are the Marmite of renewables. If I had a button that I could press that would make it invisible, I absolutely would. I'm the nearest receptor to it. Any new piece of equipment coming into your life brings a great deal of uncertainty. It's £65,000 a year just to maintain the turbine. There's no guarantee that the wind will blow as the way that the consultants say it will, and that we will generate the power that we will, but we think it's our best foot forward, so we think it's the right thing to do.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm just wondering what the size and weight of the components of the wind turbine are, and if there are any significant infrastructure limitations within Dunning which may make this whole project not possible.
The transport company from Holland who would be looking to bring the turbine components to Dunning have done a dry run from Strathallan. They are also putting 4 turbines up at the Strathallan wind farm, the sisters of this turbine. This is a used machine that's come out of a wind park in Holland, and they have done a dry run with an empty trailer, albeit fully extended, through and up to the farm, and they are very happy that they can do this without any major disruption. There are, I think, 7 truckloads to come in total. The heaviest piece is 7 tons in weight, which is the turbine itself. Thank you.
What route is that that they're taking?
The route is to the top of the Cairney Braes, down the steep hill to Fertiviate, turn right over the railway crossing, and straight to Dunning from there. Comes in at the Nisa shop, takes a right and round into the village square, takes a left and up to the farm. We've obviously looked at potentially other ways to bring the components in, but the options are reasonably limited. We even actually looked at helicoptering them in, but there were no machines that could lift a 7-ton lift.
Councillor Waters.
Sorry, can I just clarify? 7 tons doesn't seem. Some of these things weigh 50 tons, don't they?
In total, I suppose they will do, yes, but you can be sticking.
Not in total, and part of the components. That's what I'm asking about. The size of these components, I can't see it getting through Dunning.
The challenging pieces are the lightest pieces, the wind turbine blades. The actual heaviest piece is the turbine the turbine hub, and that's something that could come in on the back of an 8-wheeler truck. It's actually the very, very light components that are the most challenging, because they're the longest 35-meter blades.
So they're only 35 meters?
Yes, 35 meters, a 69-meter hub with a 35-meter blade taking to 104 meters in total.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Waters.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thanks for your deputation. Just from a business perspective, are you looking to build this turbine to complement the solar you've got, or is it supplementary? And just I'll ask the wee bit add on with this. Will you then potentially be looking at the increase in the battery storage as well to get you closer to net zero? Thanks.
I think the model that we've done is we won't have any problem getting to net zero with the turbine. Is it supplementary or complementary? I'm not sure if there's any difference, but I think they do both. Yeah, I think it does both. It takes us to a point where we can So our question as a business is, how can we run this factory and not have to import any energy? And we couldn't do it irrespective of how many turbines we put up. If we put 5 up and there's no wind, you don't generate power, as you know, and similarly in the dark, solar's no use. So the ability to buffer is a huge part of it. So the battery is a key component to it. If we did all this and didn't have a battery, you would pick some serious holes in our argument that we can come off grid. Our battery storage house is 50% full of batteries, so 900 kilowatts. We use 800 kilowatts to go through the night. On a very, very busy night, we would need 800 kilowatts. We don't need the battery for anything else other than getting us through the night. So the hierarchy is generate enough power to run the equipment, fill the battery to do the night shift, heat the water to avoid buying gas, and then spill onto the grid. So for a half an hour a day, we may be spilling. For 2 hours a day, we may be spilling. For half an hour a day, we may be buying energy in, or even for 4 hours a day, we may be buying energy. But over a year, if you add on the kilowatts coming in versus the kilowatts going out, we should be spilling more than we buy.
Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Convener, and great deputation, sir. My question is a matter of choice, I suppose, really. Why a turbine and not an extension to your solar panel, please?
If you look at the curve of how solar performs as a business, you get essentially this happening, and the bottom of each of those curves is November, December, January, February. So you have our 4 peak months of the year, we would have relatively low availability of renewables. So the windy months will be good for the turbine. The bright months will be good for solar, and both complement each other extremely well. But again, only in light of having a battery to back that up.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I'm not sure if I thanked you for your deputation last time, but anyway, thank you for it. The life expectancy of a turbine. We all know that obviously there's new sources of energy coming, and in 30 years, 40 years, wind turbines could be obsolete. So I just wonder what life expectancy of these is. It said, I think, in the report that decommissioning would take about 1 or 2 months, but I'm just wondering how long will these things, I know you said you have to service it every year, but how long it would last for, and is your plan at the end of it to remove it?
Well, our turbine will last a shorter period than anyone else's because it's used. It's 12 years old. Anecdotally, we hear of 25 to 30-year-old turbines still spinning well, but they're a bit like Trigger's broom. If you do the right thing and replace the correct parts, they continue on. Ours doesn't have a gearbox, again, which is a big effect on noise. So it's a direct drive machine, and providing that the maintenance is done, and hence the reason that we're spending so much. And when I say £65,000 a year, that includes a full warranty on all parts. So with the people who are being paid that amount of money, it's very much in their interest to make sure the turbine runs well. So to answer your question, optimistically, we think we've 15 years, and perhaps if we're very lucky, we might get 25 years out of it. But just one small point. A colleague here from Greencat has a noise monitor, and when the previous speaker was on, the decibel level in this room was 59 decibels. So just to give you an idea what 35 decibels will be like, I don't think it's going to be a major problem.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I applaud your efforts to get to zero carbon, and you seem to be heading much faster than the council in that direction, although there's big efforts going towards that. You say you've got a £65,000 a year maintenance cost. I'm a little bit concerned about having to turn the turbines off if there's flicker. I don't know what will happen if there's noise. Presumably they'll be turned off for that as well. So are you confident about your business model? It's going to be proving profitable?
The turbine doesn't stack up if it weren't for the fact that we'd already put the infrastructure in for solar, all the cabling, the transformers, the battery is there anyway. This is absolutely gets us from around 70% to over 100%. And that's why, you know, we've looked at turbines for years. Lots and lots of companies like ours have got wind turbines. We could not get it to stack up on its own. The fact is that I don't know what the correct analogy would be, but we have so many other component parts of what you need to run a turbine there anyway, that the only cost of putting this turbine up is the turbine itself. The running cost should be self-financing. We should be easily able to pay £65,000 a year and more from the good that it's going to bring. So I don't think that side of it, that the speeds at which we'd have to turn it off at are over 10 meters a second, which is pretty windy. And at that point, we'd have to throttle it back to avoid the noise levels exceeding those that are, is it?
Yeah, I think it's worth just pointing out that the turbines, we're not looking to shut the turbine down. Sorry, is that? Yeah, the turbine wouldn't be shut down necessarily through all of those periods. It would be throttled back, so the generation would be reduced, particularly for something like noise. Where shadow flicker, if there was a period of the day where that was to occur, it could be shut down. It would be a 10-15 minute period potentially as the sun moves round, and then that effect on that window has then passed. So it's, you know, it's quite a minimal disruption to the operation, and then in most cases it would just be a turning down rather than a stopping of the machine.
Thank you.
Convener Massey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'm just wondering why there do you not have any other site that you could put the turbine on, or is there a technical reason of why you can't do that?
No, we have quite a number of alternative sites we could put it on. We felt this one was the least impactful. We have the hill behind, which takes you up to the top. We could, for not an awful lot of extra cost, put the turbine actually on top of the 300-metre hill at the back, which would have made it far more optimal, and the amount of power that we would have made would have been, you know, 4 times as much power. But the visual impact on that would have just been such an impact that we just didn't feel that was appropriate, but definitely would have been a lot better in terms of generation. We've actually, as a small part to that, we've moved our site to becoming what we call high voltage. So we take our power in at 11 kV and then distribute our power around as a private network at a high voltage, which means they're small cables, so the ability to run long distances with high voltage are very good. So we definitely could have done that, but we chose to do this. It's also easier in terms of maintaining it and doing a number of those things, but certainly have other options.
Councillor Allen.
My apologies, Vice Convener. I thought I'd taken my question out, so it has already been answered, but I'll ask another one anyway. Thank you for your deputation, Simon. I understand that the electricity that you provide during the year through the solar panelling probably provides your requirements for the best part of a year. And your idea, and stop me if I'm wrong, your idea for the turbine through the winter is to balance off so that you don't have costs throughout the winter. No doubt the turbines will work sometime during the spring and summer months. How's that going to impact on the running of what you're trying to achieve? And if it generates extra electricity, how's that going to be managed?
Yeah, so the goal is to not have to buy any energy. So we're constantly dumping energy into the water to make sure we've got very hot water, which means we use 30,000 litres of hot water a day at 60 degrees. So heating our water banks up to 80, 90 degrees means that we can cool it down and then spill it all over our floors and wash our machinery, put it down through our sewage works and treat it on site. So that's a tick from the gas perspective. So to answer the question, if our battery's full, our water tanks are up to temperature, we're using all our energy to run the factory, and we have excess, which you will do from time to time, even in the winter. But actually, some of your best days for solar generation are actually on the very bright winter days. because the sun on very high temperatures, solar doesn't work so well, but you just get more bright days for longer in the summer. We will spill. We have a 2 megawatt connection to the one of the upsides of having a big energy bill from the district network operators is that we have a big connection. So therefore, the pipe that comes in can go out, and we can spill onto the grid with the excess green energy, no problem. And that has a value to the business.
Councillor Brown.
Right, back again. It's just that your colleague tipped a question in my mind. He talked about throttling back the wind turbine. So the question is this done locally or is it on site? Is somebody actually running the thing on site? And the second thing was, he talked about shadow flicker. Do you have a way of measuring that so you can then, you've got to throttle it back?
I can answer one of those two questions. So there's technology that will deal with the throttling back of the turbine when the appropriate parameters are put in. Shadow flicker.
The shadow flicker and measuring, basically, we have a condition within the planning that deals with if we receive a complaint. Shadow flicker, I mean, just to explain what shadow flicker is, it's the light passing across a window opening. So it's not something that you experience outside in the garden, that's shadow throw, and it is limited to within that sort of 10 rotor diameter area of the turbine itself. So if in the event that the Council of Environmental Health do receive a complaint to say that we're getting a nuisance within that area, then we'll go and investigate that. And obviously that is measuring, taking videos and things like that, determining what level that is, and then programming the turbine, as I said before. If that is deemed that is a nuisance level, then that will be programmed to avoid those areas and that time of operation. Oh.
So there's no way in which the actual device itself can measure it itself. There's no sensor on it to measure. So you need somebody else to input first and work from there. Is that right?
There is a sensor on. So again, we're talking about the climatic conditions. So if we say, for example, that tomorrow between 11 AM and 11:20, there is a potential for a shadow flicker significant impact at property 1. The turbine is then programmed to say that if the light sensor says it's a bright sunny day, we've got the conditions for a shadow flicker impact. At 10:59, the turbine will begin to shut down, and then it will wait until 11:20, and then it's passed. So that's how it's all programmed within the operating system.
There appears to be no further questions, so you're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputation, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask the committee members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. My gorgeous assistant's taking his time to put the question in for me. Yeah, just curious. We're obviously talking about existing houses, but should, for example, somebody want to see a development site in Thorny Hill, so near the turbines, would that actually affect our ability to put that into the local development plan if it's going to be affected by the flicker from this in the future?
I think that what would happen there is the agent of change would be someone proposing development, and they would require to consider the potential for something like shadow flicker. As has been explained, it relates to an aperture and how the crossing of the blade to that aperture in a particular direction and a particular type of light would be impacted, and it should be possible for the design to take account of that so that that potential was mitigated. So it would be the responsibility. So I think what you're saying is if someone wanted to build a house, for example, that was within the 700 metre potential influence zone, that they would have to take into account of how they would mitigate that to ensure that they, by introducing a new element of development, were not adversely impacted. It would be for the developer who already existed. Whereas what we're seeing here is the properties that have been identified as potentially being impacted in particular circumstances. The programming of the turbine could do that, and if that is found not to be sufficient, it can be enhanced through the condition.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion then? I don't know if my chat's working or not, so if somebody's put it forward, oh, there we go. Councillor James.
There you go, didn't you just know it? It worked that time. Thanks, convener. Listening to everything here and looking at the evidence, even our officer's report, which does recommend approval, says it doesn't fully comply with the relevant provisions. Knowing the impact that turbines have on a community, I've lived next to them myself, and personally I think they're a blight on our beautiful landscape. The solar panel is right next to a solar panel field, which, okay, I get it, didn't want to extend that, but I just think this will have too much of an impact on the local community of Dunning, and that's why I would recommend refusal. And I was just looking at policies, and I think I'm just trying to call it up there a minute ago, which I couldn't. 30 on our LDP, policy 39, I think it is. Sorry, landscape. Yeah, policy 39. Make sure it does not erode local distinctiveness. Safeguard the views and viewpoints. This is a huge structure, and it does catch your eyes. You know, I know they're making a lot of flicker against the window, but actually if you're out driving, walking, you can't help but it catch your eyes. So I would recommend refusal on this occasion, convener. Thank you.
Councillor Reid, you're going to second.
Yes, convener. On the basis that, as Mr. Young says, Dunning Community Council does not object flippantly to planning applications. They're a very solid group of people, and they wouldn't be objecting to this, and the residents wouldn't be objecting to this unless they were absolutely sure that it was the right thing to do. As Ian has said, that it upsets local amenity. I think it's policy 37A, 28A, 38A and D, and 39. So I'm happy to support Councillor James.
Thank you. I see Bailey Williamson, you're putting in an amendment.
No, I think Councillor Waters was putting an amendment in.
Oh, this is catching up now. Councillor Waters.
I'm happy to move to approve the application as with officer's recommendation. We're looking to encourage businesses to look at their carbon footprint and being net zero, and it's great to see a business actually look at that. I think the solar, the infrastructure is obviously already in place, which makes this very viable. And if that helps a business to reach net zero and to operate in a more sustainable way, that will also help the economy of the business as a large employer within the area. So I'm absolutely happy to approve or go for the amendment to move to approve the application.
Thank you. Bailey Williamson, you're seconding.
Yeah, I'm happy to second, convener.
Thank you for that. Do any members have comments on the report? No comments. Okay, I'll hand over to Mr. Elliott. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. At the moment, we have motion by Councillor James and Councillor Reid is to refuse, and I'll come on in a second to the terms of that motion to refuse. And you have an amendment by Councillor Waters and Councillor Williamson, or Bailey Williamson, to approve per the report. I'm going to address my comments to Councillors James and Reid. You referred a lot to the local development plan policies. However, you do have to address National Planning Framework 4, because that comes after, and it's got the primacy here as the phraseology, and particularly policy 11. And ask you to address that. You have to. This is the direct policy because it's the energy policy. It's about wind turbines, and you have to indicate where that is breached. And it's. I would say strongly in favourable of renewable energy, and that's the difficulty. We're in a different situation from what was simply the local development plan. We now have this particular policy, and I would indicate that it does say development proposals for all forms of renewable, low carbon and zero emission technologies will be supported. It goes on to say, when looking at the impact, that the project design and mitigate, development proposals will only be supported when they maximise economic impact, including local and community socio-economic benefits such as employment, which is what is mentioned here, associated business and supply chain opportunities. It goes on at E, in addition, project design and mitigation will demonstrate how following impacts are addressed, and I'm looking at subpart 2, significant landscape and visual impacts, recognising that such impacts are to be expected from some forms of renewable energy. When impacts are localised and or appropriate design mitigation has been applied, they will generally consider to be acceptable. So you'll see the balance of the policy is very much indicating that impact is acceptable where localised. If it's within a national park or national scenic area, it wouldn't be supported. But that, as I understand it, doesn't apply here. And to round off on this particular policy, the reason I'm stressing this policy is just it's coming on top of your LDP, and it's supportive of renewable energy. And to round it off, it's considering the impact, significant weight will be placed on the contribution of the proposal to renewable energy generation targets and on greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets. So having gone through that policy, members, particularly Councillor James and Reid, I think you were, mentioning visual impact. So I do have to address that. Do you consider that policy 11 of NPF4 is still breached given the terms of it, and how?
Okay, Colin, if you also look at, you're quoting policy 11. If you look at policy 11D, development proposals that impact on international or national designations, but this does have an impact on Dunning, and Dunning, the visual amenity from Dunning, and Dunning is a conservation area. So yes, it does, in my mind, impact there. Also, E, you said about E2, but E1, it says, in addition, project design and mitigation will demonstrate how the following impacts are addressed. Impacts on communities and individual dwellings. That's not been addressed because it does have, over 100 metres high, an impact on the village of Dunning, and which is, like we just said, a conservation area. So I understand. I have a real issue with that.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor James. I do understand where you're coming from, and if this has been solely under the LDP, I can see where you would come from and put forward a motion to refuse. However, you do have to address policy 11. You mentioned D, that's international or national designations, whereas a conservation area is a local designation. And I understand whilst I understand where you're coming from in terms of the impact, it's the terms of the policy which I'm asking you to address. So as I say, it is favourable to renewable energy. I don't think it's D because it's not an international or national designation. So you have to indicate where the landscape and visual impacts are so significant, can't be mitigated to a very wide degree. Not just a local impact, has to be in a very wide degree. So I'm asking you whether you want to go ahead on that.
Yeah, just to point out that the MPF4 does cover conservation areas and impacts of developments under MPF4 policy 7D. So it's maybe worth looking at that. So I think perhaps what they're talking about is more pertinent to that policy than
Yes.
the energy.
I mean, sorry, I probably didn't, those remotely probably didn't hear me there. But yes, I know you could then go on to policy 7D, but the primary one you have to address, because it's a wind turbines policy 11, to then the secondary one would be on to 7D if we get on to that. So Councillors James and Reid, sort of, if you're going to proceed, it would be refused. I think it's contrary to National Planning Framework 4, which is 2023 Policy 11, and I've read out E2, which is the significant landscape and visual impact. Yes, you do have the backup of the LDP policy, which is Policy 33A, which is about new provisions for renewable and low carbon energy. And I think you're saying it's due to the significant adverse landscape and visual impact of the proposal on Dunning. But I think you would have to say, I mean, if you think this is justified, the wider area as well, beyond which is appropriate.
I would agree the wider area. I was being specific to Dunning because that's where the location is. But yes, you're right. It is the wider area, Mr. Elliott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, there's been mention of conservation area. Are you content simply to go on that, or are you looking at the conservation area as well?
Well, thanks to Councillor Cuthbert, NPF. I'm here trying to do this on the hoof because I've got a screen up behind me here where I'm trying to look at LDP and NPF4. 7D, yes, I totally agree. National Policy Framework, Policy 7D. I think it's contrary to that, and I believe that's. Sorry.
If I could assist Councillor James, I think this is your second. If this is a second ground of refusal, it would very much be complementary and supplementary to ground one. Ground one's the main one, but having obviously previously thought about it, as you'll probably tell, refuses the proposal is contrary to National Planning Framework 4, 2023, Policy 7D, which is historic assets and places. And yes, Perth and Cross Local Development Plan 2, 2019, Policy 28A, New Development Conservation Areas. And again, due to the significant adverse landscape and visual impact, the proposal does not preserve or enhance Dunning Conservation Area. The preserve or enhance is the test for conservation areas. So that's two grounds of refusal. Is that the wording in which you and Councillor Reid, is that the motion wording?
Yes. In a nutshell, yes, it is, Mr. Elliott. Thank you.
Councillor Reid?
Yes, happy with that.
So just to recap, members, we are about to go on to summing up, but you have the motion to refuse by Councillor James and Councillor Reid. Two grounds for refusal. I'll not repeat them, but you've heard that. Basically in relation to visual amenity, both in terms of MPF4 and LDP, and in relation to same reasons for the conservation area. And your amendments by Councillors Walker and Bailey Williamson is to approve per the report.
Okay then, Councillor Waters, as the proposer of the amendment, do you wish to sum up?
I don't think I've much more to add. Just to say that it's you know, just repeat what I've said before, really. So I won't. You know, it's important we do support businesses to hit net zero. This is one business that's attempting to do it. Sits within our aims, and it sits within NPF4 from wind turbine perspective and hits all the guidance. I do have a little bit of sympathy over the conservation areas, but I think the major element of this is it's a wind turbine, and it is helping a business become more sustainable environmentally and economically. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James, do you wish to sum up?
Sorry, I think I said anything when I was proposing the refusal, convener. It does affect communities, and visual impact is a huge thing. I have huge sympathy for a business, and I commend Mr. Howie for the way he does run his business and trying to do the best. But we've also got to take cognizance of 102 people. That's unheard of in Dunning, to be fair. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks, convener.
Thank you. I'll now hand back over to Mr. Elliott to confirm the terms of the motion, and then he'll hand on to the clerk for the roll call.
Thank you, Peter. Just to reiterate, members, it's the motion is to refuse and the amendment is to approve.
Members, when I call your name, please let me know if you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Councillor Allen.
Amendment.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Harvey.
Amendment.
Councillor Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Sorry, motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor Massey.
Amendment.
Bailey McLaren.
Amen.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Reid.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Amendment.
Bailey Williamson.
Amendment.
I have 2 votes for the motion and 11 for the amendment, and therefore the amendment will carry.
Thank you. That means that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions contained in the report of handling. Thank you. Okay, folks, we move on now. This next application is for change of use of building to dwelling house and associated works at land 15 metres southeast of Woodbine Cottage, Duncreevy, Glenfarg. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. This last local application proposes the conversion of a small former mill building, which is currently unused. This application has been referred to committee in light of the receipt of letters of objection from 8 households and 1 neutral comment. Glenfarg Community Council also commented, reflecting some concern at design, overlooking drainage, ownership and impacts on wildlife. Next slide, please. The property, which features stone walling and corrugated sheet roof, forms the eastern end of a terrace range of building in the hamlet of Duncreevy. Members may recall that a proposal for a few split was considered at the meeting of the committee in January, a short distance to the southeast of this application site. This satellite image shows the application site boundary outlined in red in the centre and shows how the property is centrally located in Duncreevy. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed site plan. This shows the proposed layout, the provision of a surface water soakaway and septic tank in the land abutting the building to the east. It would ultimately lead to a full water soakaway provided within the wider garden ground of Duncreevy House, again further to the east. Next slide, please. Next, we see a more detailed site plan, which also shows the provision of a single car parking space for this 1-bedroom property, together with an external bin storage area. The ground floor shows a shared lounge and kitchen with a shower room in the rear wing, while a stair leads to the sole bedroom within the roof space. Next slide, please. Next are the external elevations. This shows the retention of the stone walling and the provision of white UPVC windows and a timbered door. The roof would be clad with grey concrete tiles. Next slide, please. Lastly, in terms of plans, we see the associated tree survey and tree protection areas in relation to the proposed foul drainage soakaway. Now we move on to a series of photographs which I took last month. The first photograph on the left shows the view from the public road and the significant character that this traditional building has. The reuse of property and buildings in a sustainable manner is a key part of the development plan. The second photo on the right shows the continuation of the building and its neighbour, which is occupied as a dwelling. It also utilises concrete tiles to the roof. Next image, please. Next, on the left, we see the view from further westwards, looking back to the building, and then in the photo on the right, the view eastwards towards the entrance to Duncreevy House. Next image, please. The next photo also shows a view southwards from the adjacent track, which serves a number of properties. The site access and car parking space is immediately on the right. The second photo shows the small area of external space associated with the property, which would cater for car parking, bin storage and drainage. Next image, please. The left-hand photo shows the view westwards from the adjacent land, showing the access into the adjacent mill cottage. This land does not form part of the site boundary, which is hard up against the rear of the building, aside from a small yard aligning with the rear extension. The second photo on the right shows the rear elevation, onto which the only openings would be a single door and small window serving the living area and a Velux roof light onto the roof plane. Next slide, please. Lastly, we see the entrance into Duncreevy House on the left, while on the right is an internal view of this vacant property and its notable stone walls, which would be retained. Next image, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation and we return to the proposed site plan.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Can I ask, do members have any questions for officers? As there are no questions for officers, can we agree a report? Therefore, planning permission is granted. Thank you. Right. Okay, we move swiftly on to the PAN, which is the formation of a 49.9 megawatt battery energy storage system and ancillary infrastructure at Tippermore, Perth. Any comments?
Traffic
Illingworth.
Not better, thank you. Get it right soon. I'd like the planners to consider three things about this application. First of all, to consider the visual impact of the battery storage containers, to consider the use of agricultural land, and to consider the arrangements for restoration of the land after they're finished with the containers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waters. Bailey Williamson.
It was just traffic management plan, possible lighting. Yeah, that'll do.
Thank you. No further comments? No. Okay, thank you. That ends today's proceedings. Thank you everyone for their contributions. Thank you.